Good evening, everybody, and a big welcome to our RISD alumni on our first fall Zoom together. I'm Val Hurd, class of 78 in painting and printmaking, and my pronouns are she, her. And I'm here tonight with co-chair Miriam Block, class of 94 in textile design, and RISD's Assistant Director of Alumni Institutional Engagement, Katerina Ellis, who is off screen at the moment. Together, we'll be facilitating this presentation by Susan Osgood, class of 78 in painting. We have a few Zoom etiquette issues to address first. Please note that this event is being recorded and will be posted online by RISD. So we'd appreciate it if you turn off your video if you do not wish to have your image shown. Please mute your audio during Susan's presentation. And there will be time for a Q&A after her talk, so please feel free to put any questions in the chat section at any time during or after her presentation. At that time, either Miriam or I will read your question, or if you prefer, you can raise your hand, which is found in the reactions section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that we in Vermont are living on the unceded lands of 4 Abenaki tribes, only 2 of which have been legally recognized by our state: the Nulhegan Band of the Kusik Abenaki and the Elnu Abenaki tribe. Susan and I have known each other since our RISD days. We are both veterans of the painting department when it was housed just at Carr House. I'm sure Deidre remembers this. These were the days when there were very few interdisciplinary opportunities in the undergraduate program with which to expand our skill set. And the international program was a year in Rome. So, like many graduates of our time, we had to make our own career opportunities. And to our mutual surprise, when we rediscovered each other back in Vermont, our careers had run parallel. Both of us have been drawn year after year to the Middle East, except Susan managed to carve a sustainable career from her travel itch. What makes Susan extraordinary is her ability to work both with scientific precision as an archaeological illustrator and with lyrical abstraction as a painter printmaker. Both practices have earned her recognition. She is revered as top in her field in the archaeological community. In the fine art world, she's received numerous awards with a reputation that spans both sides of the Atlantic. The magic that is Susan is her ability to suspend a sense of time, so appropriate for a woman with 2 professional lives that span almost 3 millennia. A portion of each year spent among the hieroglyphs and tombs of ancient Egypt, and the other in our challenging contemporary world of Brattleboro, Vermont. Now, Susan is best able to give you a sense of her own backstory as an archaeological illustrator and visual artist. But I'd like to acknowledge a few, and not by any means all, of her credentials to date. On the international side, from 1992 to present, she's shown at the American Cultural Centers and Galleries in Luxor, Cairo, and Alexandria, Egypt. In Germany, she's shown at the American Cultural Centers in Heidelberg, Munich, Cologne, and Frankfurt, Germany. In 2009 and 10, Susan toured her exhibition, Archaeology and the Art of Susan Osgood, at Bonn University's Egyptian Museum in Bonn and the Museum of August Kestner in Hanover, Germany. In 2013 through 17, Susan toured Explorations, Egypt in the Art of Susan Osgood at the University of Porto's Special Exhibition Galleries and the University of Coimbra Science Museum in Portugal, and then at the Egyptian Museum at Leipzig University in Leipzig, Germany. In the US, Susan has shown with the Ava Galleries in New Hampshire, the AIR Gallery and the Painting Center in New York City, the Jeffrey Letter Gallery in Long Island City, the Fitchburg Art Museum in Massachusetts, and she's been included in Yale University's online journals, Letters, Literature, Visual Arts, and the Spirit. She presently shows with the Mitchell Giddings Fine Arts in Brattleboro, Vermont. Her work is in the permanent collections of Amico Oil, the University of Combria's Science Museum in Portugal, the Hauser Braumeister and Steigmann Clinic in Germany, the Crowell Collection of the Moore Free Library in Newfane, Vermont, the Frisbee Memorial Library Hospital in New Hampshire, the KPMG Global Learning Development and Innovation Center in Florida. Her awards include grants from the Pollock-Krasner Foundation, the Gottlieb Foundation, the Puffin Foundation of New Jersey, the Barbara Deming Memorial Fund, the Robert Rauschenberg Change, Inc., and of course, our own VCA grants. Susan has been widely published and has lectured internationally, and we are super lucky tonight to have caught her before she leaves again in a few weeks for another season at Chicago House in Luxor, Egypt. So Susan, I'm going to have you take it away from here.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And thanks you, Val, Hurd, Miriam Block, and Katrina Ellis for making this whole event happen. I'm really pleased to share with you all. I am an abstract artist, as Val mentioned, an archaeological illustrator, and I live in Brattleboro. And tonight I'm going to talk about my influences, my archaeological illustration work, my artwork, including the recently published book, A Ghost of Water, Poems by Jenna Rose Nethercott, inspired by the art of Susan Osgood. I grew up in an old farmhouse in rural southern New Hampshire, surrounded by nature, and both my parents were visual. My mom was my mom was a hairdresser. My dad was a tool and die maker. And I'm the middle of 5 kids. We're all artistic and or musical. I have a sister with a BFA and a brother with a MFA from RISD. And I wanted to travel ever since I was a little kid. I remember spreading out on the living room floor with the Boston Sunday Globe travel section, looking up all the travel brochures, sending away for them. And I had a pretty big pile of them, imagining these faraway places. One of my mother's clients as a hairdresser, which she called Heads, she was a Rhode Island School of Design graduate. I used to listen to her stories at the breakfast table, and I decided that RISD was the only place I wanted to go. I applied after I got out of high school and got rejected. So off I went. I studied life drawing, portrait and landscape painting. I took piano lessons at the Berklee School of Music, and I traveled to Europe. 3 years later, I got accepted to RISD and found it a hugely fulfilling experience to be among so many creative people, immersing myself in art. I majored in painting and took a lot of other classes. Towards my final year, I started to wonder, how am I going to make a living, be able to travel, and be an artist? And I got excited by slideshows of 2 of my professors and their trips to Egypt. One of them is David McCauley, who's in these little boxes off to the right watching. And I remember your slideshow with a little briefcase next to one of the huge blocks of the Great Pyramid of Giza. So my painting started to evolve into imagined archaeological excavations. And doing research at Brown University, I got to know the Egyptologist there. I used his library a lot. And he's the one who suggested that I apply to Chicago House, which is also called the Epigraphic Survey, but I don't use that word because no one really knows what it means. It's the study of languages. It is the University of Chicago's documentation project in Luxor. So I sent out inquiries and to Chicago House and other universities and museums working in Egypt, asking whether they had an archaeological illustration position. So let's begin the slideshow. Okay. Painting and drawing for me are forms of travel, giving the sense of being in unfamiliar territory and the wonder of discovery. These are the archaeologically inspired paintings, excavations. This one is actually from the first known bird fossil found in Germany, and it's called Fossil. It's 58 by 67 inches, an oil painting painted in 1978. This one, I traveled to Egypt in 1979 with a joint trip with Brown University and the RISD Museum. And it was just a dream come true, truly amazing. This painting is called To Another Place. It's 66 inches square, an oil painting in 1979, and the hieroglyphs in the fragment at the bottom read To Another Place. So I was really imagining these excavations. And I remember when I was in Egypt, I saw these pottery shards on the ground, and the guide said, "Oh, those are just Roman." This is titled Excavation Number 1, 68 by 80 inches, painted in 1980. And number 2, excavation number 2, 68 by 90 inches, 1981. In 1981, I volunteered for the Boston Museum in their Egyptology department. And I think Tim Kendall may be listening, who I worked with him as a special exhibition artist. And that summer, I got a position, a volunteer position with the universities of Minnesota and Missouri in Egypt. And I was working at this site. It was the only Greek city in Egypt along a since dried up branch of the Nile. And you can see the 1800s excavation pit that has become inundated right across the top middle here. And behind is the contemporary little city, little town there. And actually we could only excavate around the outside. So that was the summers of 82 and 83. And behind me, and this is a picture of it, is a large charcoal drawing. I started, it's a diptych, so 2 pieces, and I started on one side, and I didn't know where I was going to go with it, and it became my imagining of what was under that inundated 1880s excavation pit at Naucratis, the site of the Greek city. So this is titled Journey to Naucratis. It's 62 by 84 inches. It's charcoal, and it was drawn in 1983. In 1985, oh, did I mention I moved to Brattleboro and right after RISD. So I'm in Vermont now. And 1985, after 7 years of applying to the University of Chicago, their project called Chicago House, I got a job with them. So off I went to Luxor, and this is a view of Luxor from the Western Desert, the Libyan Plateau, all the way across to the Eastern Desert. And you get a good sense of what the whole length of Egypt looks like, which is the Nile River Valley, and very fertile, and the rest is desert. This is Chicago House, built in the 1930s. This is where I spend my winters, and it's right on the Nile. It's we're about 18 people working there, all different professions, working together to document monuments in Luxor that haven't been documented until now. So that's our mission. This is our library. It's one of the best Egyptological libraries in the world. And it's a wonderful place to go to be inspired. The residency area connected to that library is here with the courtyard. You can see the Nile from our rooftop, and my living quarters are along that upper level mezzanine. This is my fine art studio in my suite of rooms overlooking the Nile and that Western Desert. And I think I'm working on one of the series that I'm going to talk about later, made out of topographical maps of that Western Desert. This is my archaeological or epigraphic studio, We've been working digitally for the past 12 years or so. So here I am working on a tablet. My computer is connected up to it, and I'm drawing with a stylus. One of the first sites I worked at was Luxor Temple, about 3,500 years old, layers of history. And right down this central axis, under the colonnade hall, is where I started drawing. And we are making facsimile drawings of the scenes on the walls. So that's where I was, but I was also, and this temple is right in the middle of Luxor, lots of noise, cars honking, tours, thousands of people coming through as tourists. There's a mosque that's still operating inside the temple. So really, truly layers of history. So the special project that I was loaned over to be an artist for was also with the University of Chicago. This is what's the date of this? 85, I think, when I first started with Chicago House. And the project was the medieval Luxor project. They were excavating the surrounding area around the temple and found this sculptural head of King Thutmose III. So my plein air studio there is an ancient mud brick dwelling. These are my pencil drawings of that head, and the drawings have been published by the University of Chicago. And the sculpture of Thutmose III is now in the Luxor Museum. In 1991, we moved from the Luxor Temple over to the West Bank at the edge of the desert. And this is Medinat Habu Temple. It's a huge temple complex. And to give you a size of the scale, right next to this fertile area is a little red truck. So that gives you a little sense of how big this is. And the temple that I'm working at right now is this area here. And this is us at work. So our senior artist on the left, we draw on photographs at the wall, observing the wall, and ink over those pencil lines. And then once that's done, the photographer bleaches the photograph and a blueprint is made. And all this is now digitized. And the Egyptologist on the right, our senior Egyptologist, is looking at a blueprint and making checks and edits to the drawing. So it's the visual person working together with the Egyptologist. And this method was developed about 100 years ago when Chicago House began. This is a scene from within that small temple, and it has really beautiful color. It has a roof over it. It's been well protected, and it really gives you a sense of how much color there was on the wall. And I'm sure there was even more originally. This has been cleaned, and on the left side, there's a bit of the original wall, which probably has smoke damage on it. More often than not, I'm drawing on a black and white photo because we rarely, outdoors in the temples, there's not much color left. So that's a large format photo on the left, and my drawing is on the right. Our publications look something like this. This is a 25-pound boxed portfolio with translations of the texts, descriptions of the scenes, and photographs of the scenes together with our drawings. These are all digitized online as well. And we print about 200 of these each time we publish, and then the rest are available. I mean, the same book is available digitally. In 2006 was the first tomb to be discovered in the Valley of the Kings since Tutankhamun's was unearthed in 1922. And the University of Memphis team did not have an artist. So once again, I was loaned over to this project as an artist to draw some of the things that they found. And if you look in this lower left corner, you can see a ladder going down. And this is a National Geographic artist, Leor Taylor's cross-section of that. So here's the ladder going down. The mission discovered a series of their workmen's huts here. And then as they were clearing the ground, they found a corner of bedrock. And this shaft was all filled in with debris from thousands of years of flooding. So they excavated down the shaft. This doorway had stones in front of it, so no flooding got in there. And this is what was found. 8 coffins. 2 were tiny child coffins that were gold gilded. And the rest, most of them were really badly damaged by termites. There were 30 large clay vessels, and everything, the coffins and the vessels, were filled with anything having to do with a royal burial. But they never found, we didn't find any bodies, so no one knows who this royal person was who died. So I had to really be very careful of the artistic style, because that's all we had to go by. And we think it's around the period of the grandfather of Tutankhamun, Amenhotep III. So here I am. It's a small room there, 3,500 years of dust, people moving the pots out, people starting to conserve the coffins. It was a kind of chaos. Discovery Channel, National Geographic, all kinds of things were happening in there. I was just trying to get my work done. Sometimes I had the place to myself, which is it was a wonderful treat. I mentioned the termite damage. The most beautiful coffin I thought was this one, which it was so human. Each eye, nostril, size of the mouth were different, very human. And also you get a sense from this photo, the wood was like paper, and that you see the termite castings across the front of the coffin. On the right is my drawing, which I did on graph paper, scale of 1 to 7. And I did this for all the coffins, just to give anyone looking at this a sense of what they were like as they were found, because all of this material was cleared out and the tomb is empty now, with one black pitch hand mark on the white quartz wall and limestone wall. So this was my 5 minutes of fame. This is my hand that was on the Discovery Channel. The coffin has been cleaned, and I'm drawing it in pencil there. My archaeological work, both for Chicago House and the University of Memphis, and all my work was put together in a show by my Egyptologist friend and patron, Eberhard Jobeck. And as Val mentioned, it traveled around Europe, a couple of different titles to the show, but this is Explorations, Egypt in the Art of Susan Osgood. And this is the poster for the Leipzig Museum in 2017. The painting is my version of what that beautiful coffin may have looked like when it was first made. And then behind is a monotype print called Red Sea, which I'll show you in a bit. The next series that I'm going to show you are the 5 prints and paintings, fine art, part of my slide talk. Usually I arrive at Chicago House and I know what I'm doing for my work on site, but my own work, often I don't know where I'll begin. So I went to the library this year in 2008, and I discovered this medieval map made by Muhammad el-Idrisi of the Middle East, but I could make no sense of it. It was purely wonderful abstract lines dancing from page to page. Finally, I discovered that at the bottom right is the Mediterranean. This is the Nile Delta in the second page, and then Mediterranean, the Red Sea, the Saudi Arabian Peninsula to the left here, Persian Gulf, and the Tigris and Euphrates emptying into there. So the map was upside down. The north is at the bottom. This is a Xerox. It's 13 by 17 inches, and I used it as a working drawing. The central panel I drew in pencil because that section of the book didn't Xerox very well. So fascinated with maps and mapping, I started painting. This is a series called Maps. It's number 5. It's 14 inches by 11 inches, and it's gouache, which is like an opaque watercolor on paper. And I used parts of the map. This is actually right off that map. And one of the places that my exhibition traveled and opened, actually it opened up there, was at the Bonn University Egyptological Museum. And it was a huge old building with tall space and high ceilings. And I realized I wanted to do a large version of this Muhammad el-Idrisi map. So here I am working on the map. And this is the map. It's 95 inches tall by 182 inches wide and hung together with those map series. And this is called Travels with Idrisi. It's gouache on handmade Indian papers. And this is at the opening of the Porto University Special Galleries venue for my show. In 2009, this is the next series, the Red Sea series, which I showed you behind on that poster for Leipzig. I had a printmaking residency at the Vermont Studio Center, and it was Vermont Artists Week. So I was there for a week, and I had wonderful camaraderie with the other printmakers, which was a nice break from being a painter alone in my studio. These are diptychs. One of the printmakers said, well, why don't you try using gauze? So this is one of the first one. It's Red Sea number 2, 13 inches by 23 inches. It's a monotype diptych. And the gauze is quite obvious. I rolled on ink, I painted on, sometimes I rubbed the ink away. Monotypes are a lot like painting, but the image comes out backwards, so it's more of a challenge. And then when you make it a diptych, it's even more of a challenge. I would start with one side, have that, get it into a pretty good place, and then imagine, okay, what else does this piece need? What's going to be on the other side? And as I got going on this series, this is Red Sea number 3, the same size. The threads from the gauze started fraying. I had gauze all over my studio, threads everywhere. They started to become parts of the prints. And once I ink the plate, the gauze can go on top of it, and I run it through, and that area, when I peel the paper off and peel the gauze off, it leaves a negative area. So this is what I'm just mentioning, but then that gauze has ink on it. So over here is what's called a ghost, and that's the red ink on the gauze. I used, as I said, paint brushes. I ran these prints through a number of times. This one, for example, it has kind of a ultramarine blue burnt umber background, and then I ran the red and then maybe gauze and then red on top of that. And I got very involved in this series. It was wonderful. I just had a week and I created 10 of these. This is Red Sea number 7. They began to be very organic and flowing. And in the middle of the night, the title for this series came to me. They had to be called Red Sea. The next series, I was thinking of maps and the concept of mapping, and I started with blue, and this is called the Map of Water series. This is number 1. It's 60 inches by 66.5 inches, a monotype done in 2011. I wondered, would we someday need a map of water? Not really a navigational chart, but rather an otherworldly diagram of water's very essence. Map of Water number 2. This I added dry point etching later once I got going, but I started with the bottom 3 prints, just the blue and the resist of the netting and rubbing away the inks. And so I had 3 blueprints on my studio floor. And I was trying to figure out, I got to that place where do you go? what am I going to do next with this piece of art? And I didn't know it would be 6 pieces, but I had them laid out on my studio floor, and they were life size, and they conveyed a sense of serenity and otherworldliness, just the blue, very watery. And it brought back a profound experience that I'd had the year before. A colleague of mine was found dead in the Nile, and I was asked to come help identify the body. I washed it together with a friend, and with the whole archaeological community, we buried her that evening, which is traditional in the Middle East. It was a profound, as I said, I'd never experienced anything like that before. So this experience came back to me, and I realized at that point that I could create a figure. I could sort of memorialize, honor, celebrate this experience. And I created the figure in dry point etching, which is, you can ask the question if you want later on. And then I wanted the top to be almost like a night sky. So I put in the 3 upper prints. So that's the story of this piece. And it's a kind of memorial to that profound event. To give you a sense of the scale of these, this is the exhibition at the University of Porto galleries. And I'm there together with Eberhard Jobeck, who may be listening as well. He's a dear friend, archaeologist, Egyptologist, and a great supporter and patron of the arts. And he's made many shows of mine happen throughout Germany and Portugal. So we had just gotten the catalogs for the show, and we're having a look there. This is map of water number 6, 13 by 23 inches. Again, a monotype. I used dried palmetto palm fronds, and they're cut into ribbons. So I love the way they frayed and flowed and seemed as if they were floating in water. I also like with these diptychs, I like a diptych because if I start with one piece of paper, I'm limited. If I have 2 pieces, things don't quite come together, colors are a little bit off, and I would never do that in one painting. And I feel like it's a lot like life. Things just never quite happen, but surprises happen. Map of water number 9. This is made from frayed plastic tarp. And right around this time, I heard a statement by UNESCO saying, if we continue to put as much plastic into the ocean as we have been, there'll be more plastic than fish in 30 years. Tough to digest that kind of thing. The last 2 of this series are Map of Water 12 and 13. They're singular prints. I collected seaweeds along the coast of Maine and used them in these prints. And another wonderful part of printmaking, the piece on the left, I don't know how I got those undulations in the blues and the almost turquoise green blue. That's printmaking. Sometimes things happen and it's a wonderful surprise. This piece on the left reminded me almost of lungs, the 2 sides and the capillary type things. So that's the next series I want to tell you about came about from finding rolls of old topographical maps of the west bank of Luxor and the town of Gorna. It's an area that I've walked a lot in. I've found fossils and Paleolithic stone tools at the top of the mountain plateau, visited ancient tombs over and over again. It's just a magical place. And I had these maps and I started collaging them. So these are, it's called Gorna Travels. This is number 12 on the left and number 14 on the right. Number 14 is from 2020 and number 12 is from 2015. So They're painted. I used ink, pens, different kinds of papers on top, as well as the topographical maps. And as I had them all up on my studio wall in Luxor, some of them started to come together as diptychs. I just can't help myself. And I love them coming together. And I also, sometimes I like working asymmetrically like this. The next piece is Gorna Travels number 11, and it's 12 by 16 and a half. It's mixed media and collage, and it's from 2015. The last series that I want to share with you is called Between Breath and the River. For me, these are single monotypes. They are mapping water, the flow, the movement, the changes in a river's course, almost geologic changes that happen over millennia, to make the textures and the objects or the forms. I used old embossed wallpapers, yarns, threads, variety of things. This is Between Breath and the River 5. This has a plastic netting in it also, and this series conjures up something almost as elemental as the rhythm of breath. Seems like sort of in and out, a flow. This is Between Breath and the River 4. It's on the cover of the book of poems, which I'll show you. And the last of this series is Between Breath and the River number 10. So all these are from 2016. And this has also pine needles, hemlock needles, the embossed wallpapers, plastic netting that I found along the Nile, and yarn. So that's the end of this series. And all of these series are in this book, A Ghost of Water, Poems by Jenna Rose Nethercott, inspired by the art of Susan Osgood. And you see that map of water, Between Breath and the River 4, and the designer decided to turn it on its side. And I thought, oh no, I don't know, but I love it. And I've started working more horizontally lately. So that was a good influence. So how did this book come about? What's the story of it? My husband, Mark, and I were walking along the main street in Brattleboro and came upon Jenna Rose Nethercott at a small lace-covered table with a little old portable typewriter and a sign that said poems to order. So we decided to order a poem, and we gave her the topic, words to live by. We went off and got a cup of coffee, came back, and were incredibly impressed with this pithy little poem she created in 15 minutes. So I was telling this story to Eberhard, and he loved the story and said, I think you have to get in touch with Jenna Rose, and we need to collaborate on a book. So that's how this book came into being. So I got in touch with Jenna Rose. I had only met her that little bit on the street. So I had her to lunch. We had a studio visit here. I showed her these prints and work that I just showed you. We got talking about ghosts in printmaking and ghosts in real life and lack of water and abundance and flooding and maybe even drowning. And she loved the idea of a book. And I sent her off with Xeroxes of these prints and paintings. A year later, she delivered 17 narrative poems that are exquisite. And it was just a fabulous collaboration. The book is on my website, along with a short video, thumb-through video of it. And that's the end of my talk. So thank you. And I think we're going to have some questions.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was so amazing. And for those of you who are interested, I think we already had listed the website for Susan's website and information on the book in the chat. You do have a few questions. The first one came from Deirdre, who said, "How did you light the tomb site?"
The tomb site. Oh, the one that I talk about. Well, it was amazing. It probably is the pièce de résistance of my archaeological career up to now. And there were days, as I said, that it was chaos in that little room, and I could hardly get anything done. Sometimes I just left because there was no room for me to even, I just had a little tiny, I had about as much room as myself. And sometimes I had to draw the coffins upside down. And so it was a challenge. I'd never done anything like that before. And I'd come back to Chicago House every day. And my director of Chicago House, Ray Johnson, is an art historian. And he would say, okay, so look for the corner of the eye, look for the cosmetic line. Does it widen at the end? And look for this and look for that. And so we gradually, I had great support around that. So it was an amazing experience. And there were times when I had the place to myself. And the Valley of the Kings gets, in its heyday of tourists, 11,000 people a day coming through the maybe 20 tombs that are open. So I would hear this down the 20 meters down the shaft, I would hear this buzzing of people and sounds and footsteps, but I was down in this room, this limestone room, drawing these coffins and all by myself. So it was a great experience.
Susan, I think the other part of that question was, how did you get electricity down there to light what you were looking at?
Oh, I did not use ancient lamps or mirrors. Polished metals. All the tombs have electricity. So I guess we had lamps. Yeah, I guess, yeah. And I had my own little lamp that I could kind of move around and get to see what I needed to see.
You had a question, Val.
I did. I'm moving directly into your contemporary work. I wanted to know whether or not you use printmaking ink on your diptychs, or whether you use painting medium, or maybe all of the above.
Most recently, I'm using water-based oil paints, which clean up nicely. And I mix. I don't have a print making press myself, so I go down to the River Gallery in downtown Brattleboro, or I had that printmaking residency at the Vermont Studio Center. And usually they have supplies, too, non-toxic supplies. Oh, I was also at ZMA's printmaking in Florence for a residency there. And most of these studios nowadays have non-toxic inks. I use ink and paint interchangeably, and actually sometimes I mix them together. So I'm pretty unorthodox. I'm a painter, you know, I just slide in under the door of printmaking.
So if anyone else has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, or you could unmute yourself and ask, or if you want as well.
Well, and while people are thinking, I'll ask another question. Susan, what are you working on now?
I'm working on this talk show. I've been working on this for weeks, actually. And it's my first Zoom out of my studio. So actually, Val said, oh, you can just give the same talk that you gave at Ava Gallery this summer. And I thought, okay, I can do that. But at Ava Gallery, I could walk around and point out the work. And this is a different experience. So what am I working? And I'm packing to go to Egypt in, I don't know, I'm not counting the days. But yeah, that's what my studio is these days.
Can you talk a little bit about the drawing behind you?
Yes, I did. This is Journey to Naucratis. So I showed a slide of it, and this is from 1983. It's a charcoal drawing, and it's a diptych also. It's inspired by that Naucratis site in the Delta that I worked at, the first project I worked at in Egypt. And the 1880s excavation by Sir William, no, Flinders Petrie is inundated now. So we could not see what was in the excavation pit. What we could do was excavate around the outside. So I wondered, well, what would we find if we went down into that pond? And the pond was, you didn't even want to touch your hand to that water. It was pretty gross, but maybe it has stuff under it. Maybe people have excavated there by now. This was 1982 and 83, so quite a while ago.
Susan, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, David.
Oh, yeah, hi. That what you called memorial drawing
Yeah.
or painting, memorial painting?
Print.
I mean, print is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Thank you. Thank you.
Somehow, how you extract from such an occasion, such an event.
Yeah. It's
something so. I mean, it's not surprising that it's powerful. It's also wonderful that it's beautiful to look at, and we don't need to know the story. We just feel the power. That's remarkable, just remarkable. The whole series you've shown, the series of series.
Thanks.
Such a delight to see, and I think obviously it comes from being in these two worlds at different times, and I don't know how you prepare for that. The juxtaposition of being in Luxor, then being in Brattleboro, and then being in Luxor, and then, I mean, I would go to Luxor just to get away from the news I would tend to hear in Vermont or the U.S. But then I know it's a completely different kind of place and existence, and the people who live around you in their small homes and so on and so forth are just. They're not living 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. I don't mean to suggest that, but they're, from what I remember, it was staggeringly different. But you are feeding so successfully off both of these sort of wealths of inspiration that and that it shows. It shows. Thank you.
Thank you, David. David was my 2D design teacher at RISD, and the one who showed a slideshow that got me interested in Egypt. And yeah, so that means a lot. I'm reminded of a Romary Bearden quote that the artist has to be like a whale and swim through the ocean with their mouth wide open, and then close it up and let what they don't want go and hang on to what they want. Something like that. That's my translation of Romary Bearden's quote.
I love that. You have another question from Adelaide. How are the prints protected when they are hanging in a museum or gallery, both from light and from just general activity?
I use UV plexiglass. I frame everything. So I have a mixed emotions about framing because it creates a barrier between you and the piece. Like now, I could touch this and have charcoal on my hand, but yeah, work on paper has to be protected, and that's what I do. I frame it.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
So Susan, when you and I started out, archaeologists that we worked with were all white. Has the archaeology at Chicago House, has it integrated with Egyptian?
Yes, yes. Actually, there's the American Research Center in Egypt that has a field school, and they've been teaching Egyptians working in antiquities, conservation, photography, 3D photography, documentation. So they've been getting some great training in the Luxor area. I think that project started out at the pyramids, but it continues. And there's a pretty, after the revolution, there became a pretty vibrant young group of Egyptologists who are, our library hardly ever was used by Egyptians, and now it's mainly Egyptians.
Great.
So they're pretty active. I think funding is the big issue, and but yeah, that maybe that answers your question. And we hire actually probably close to 100 Egyptians, conservators, stone guys working with the stonemasons. We have, and they're not, the conservators are trained in conservation. The stoneworkers, some of them have been trained, but they're trained by our stonemason.
And how many of the archaeologists now speak Egyptian or Arabic?
Oh,
Sorry.
you know, it's a toss-up. Even people from the embassy. I've met people at the embassy that don't speak Arabic very well. But yeah, you don't have to. You have to also speak German, French, well, Arabic if you can get that in, Coptic, Greek, hieroglyphs. You got a lot of languages under your belt if you're an Egyptologist.
Susan, you have a few more questions coming in.
Yes.
And the first, well, Elizabeth Kelly wanted to say, your work is elegant and evocative, deep and moving. I am impressed by the multiple viewpoints in many works. The memorial drawing feels like I'm looking at the image as if on a wall and down into the image from above. Do you feel multiple viewpoints as you are working on pieces? I feel so transported by the work.
Hi, Elizabeth. She's also an archaeological illustrator and an artist, a wonderful fine artist. So nice to have you on board here. I find sometimes I only see things one way, and then I'll look at it later, or someone else will say, oh, like the big map of water print that was asymmetrical and it has this kind of loop coming down into it. And the poet, Jenna Rose, said, I don't know whether I'm looking up at the bottom of something or if I'm looking down into the sea at something. And I love that. It gave me a kind of perspective that sometimes my world is just, it's my world, so I can't see beyond it, but I love it when I can see different perspectives.
Nice. And then Lori Chick wanted to know, where will you be working this year and on what?
I will be working at Medinet Habu Temple, which I showed a slide of, and I did have time to mention a tomb that I'm working on with Chicago House from the time of Amenhotep III. Most things in Luxor are, I say, 3,500 years old. Sorry to any Egyptologists who are listening, but it's New Kingdom, what is called the New Kingdom period. So the tomb I'm working at is that from the time of the grandfather of, is that right? King Tut, Amenhotep III. It's a rock cut tomb. So you walk down into the ground. It's a huge, like this size of a big house, carved into the ground into bedrock limestone. And it has 3 tombs, one to the north, west, and south. And we're working in the north one. It was flooded and has a lot of debris in it. So up to now, we're just working on the outside, but the relief is exquisite. And it's interesting. glancing at it when I knew I was going to start working there, I thought, oh, this is beautiful relief. But I sit with these drawings for hours, days, penciling them, inking them. And I start to see that some areas in a relief that's a quarter of an inch deep has 5 depths of perspective going on. So these guys, I feel like I'm copying the masters. These people were incredible artists. So it's an honor to be working there. Plus it's quiet. I can hear birds fly over. I work with 1 or 2 other people there, not the hundreds over at Medina Habu Temple. So I love working there. So I'll be in the 2 places on the west bank of Luxor.
Well, I think we're coming up on 8 o'clock. So if anyone has any last question that we want to have, and then I think
Maybe one more question from me. I'm sorry, I got her and I'm going to go for what I can get here. But Susan, as David was saying, it's remarkable that you are able to bridge both of these worlds. And my question is, do they collide at any point? Does your contemporary world and your ancient world, do they not at any point sit well? Your art seems to integrate them beautifully, but I was wondering, do they overlap in any uncomfortable ways when you're in Vermont, or Vermont intervenes when you're in Egypt?
It's an interesting question. I'm not really sure how to answer it, but I guess I'm a meticulous artist when I'm on site there. I make facsimile drawings. It's like scientific illustration. And every now and then, like one afternoon, I was at Medina Habu Temple and I was working in a bark shrine that had a open roof overhead. And I smelled this odd smell, like smoky something. And I asked our head guy, Badawi, and it was a little conversation in Arabic. What's that smell? And he said, well, and he thought for a second, and then he said, women burn fires. They can burn anything like garbage and plastic, and you step over it so many times and it keeps away the evil spirits. So stories like that, I mean, I think it's another world in a way, and it's fascinating. And that's where I see total differences. But then there's people in Cairo, people who are friends from Cairo and who could be from anywhere. So the rural part of Egypt can get pretty different from, not even as rural. It's more rural than Brattleboro. And Val came to Egypt some years ago and we walked around we looked for fossils up in the mountaintops. Had a great time.
Yeah, so now I have to get you over to Jordan.
Okay.
well, I think we're at the end of our time here. So this has been so amazing, and so appreciative of you, Susan, sharing your work. It's just so exciting to hear, and from our alumni group in Vermont, and then everyone else who joined us as well from other RISD grads and non-grads. And the recording is available for people who want to share or watch again, or for people who missed. And the information will be available on RISD's YouTube channel in a week or so, I believe. So we'll post that on our RISD Vermont alumni website, but you can find it on the RISD alumni page as well. Any last thoughts?
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, everyone. This is such a treat. I'm really thrilled to share this with all of you and to hear from everyone. Great.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Same to everyone.
Thank you.
Ma
Take
salama.
care. Safe travels.
Thanks.